Donald Trump has made the call. Be in Washington, D.C., January 6th. Don't miss it. Information to follow, he says. Of course, January 6th is the day a joint session of Congress will count the votes to determine who the next president will be. And my friends, this is either the end of the Trump presidency or the beginning of the true Trump era. Trump supporters firmly believe Donald Trump did win. It was stolen. And thus, they are going to descend upon D.C. with tents and food, and they're going to occupy. Alex Jones put out a statement saying that 10 million people will show up. Well, I don't think 10 million people are going to show up. I do think there's going to be a decent amount of people. I do. And as of right now, I can say I fully intend on being there. Intend on being there is a lot different from saying that I will be there, mind you. But the issue is technical capabilities. So I will tell you this. I am booked to be in January on the 6th to do Timcast IRL live from D.C. And the goal is to have various people who are attending the protests come up and we'll do interviews with them. And considering the amount of people that might show up, we might be one of the only people with a stream happening in the vicinity. So it should be interesting. We've recently purchased some new equipment so that we can very easily do the live show remotely. And that's my intent. Now, do I think it's going to be a revolution or a counter-revolution? I don't know, whatever. No, I think a lot of people will be there. I think it'll be one of the biggest events we've ever seen. I think it will, maybe 1 million people, but that's probably, look, last month they did a big rally and like a couple 100,000 people showed up. That was big. This might be bigger. It might not be. I really don't know. But the reason why I would say, I don't know, maybe 1 million, but that's probably not just, I don't know, man. I don't know what to expect. But I do think with a lot of people feeling like this is Trump's last hurrah and the last chance to defend the Trump, administration and try and do something. I think a lot of people are going to show up. Over at the Donald.win, they're saying January 6, 2021 is the new 4th of July, 1776. Bring tents, food, water, and whatever you need to stay till we take our country back. It is easier to defend what we still have than try and rebuild whatever is left after Biden sells the country off. Blue state governors are trying to bankrupt everything they can so their Chinese CCP masters can come in and buy it on the cheap. Then the traitors will collect large commissions. Think Cuomo and Newsom. These people are traitors and Biden must be stopped. Be prepared to stay and not leave. This is a war. This is war of sorts and not something over in a few hours. So they don't go as far as say it's literal war. Alex Jones has called for a peaceful protest. We may very well see something unprecedented. But, I'll tell you this. I have a normalcy bias, right? I think we all do. And I also have, we'll just leave it at normalcy bias. And what that basically means is nobody thinks things like this could happen. But I tell you, my friends, I have seen these things happen in real life. And you wouldn't believe some of it. I reference Egypt quite a bit when I talk about this stuff, but I was in Egypt, I was in Ukraine, I was in Venezuela. Egypt is probably the best example because that's where I actually watched the revolution happen. And it was several thousand people in Tahrir Square. And we didn't know what was going to happen because it was just people jumping up and down with laser pointers. And then all of a sudden we got word that a bunch of news stations had been raided. No joke. That freaked me out. I'm in the Hilton and they're arresting journalists. And I was like, oh, geez. So I went to the lobby and I saw some journalists. I asked them what's going on. And they were like, these were British guys. They were like, no, don't worry about it. They're arresting Muslim Brotherhood. They're like pro-Muslim Brotherhood journalists and news reports. And that was really interesting. The military decided at that point to take over because the protest and the instability was putting the country at risk. So they did. They removed, I believe it was Morsi. And that was all due to a few thousand people dancing in the street in Tahrir. Now, not completely, because you also had Nasser City, which is where the Muslim Brotherhood was all, doing their camp, and they were camping out. But the military made a decision. We have these two factions. They're increasing their protests. They won't stop. It's been over a year. And so they decided to intervene. Now, I don't think anything like that could happen in the U.S. right now, but that's normalcy bias. A lot of people are probably feeling similarly like nothing's going to happen, blah. But what if 10 million people really do show up? I'll tell you this. There's reason to believe right now that Donald Trump is done. And, I tweeted this, and I hope everybody understands, like, my tweets aren't like the most serious thing. I said the end of the Trump era. It's something like that. Because Mitch McConnell thanked Donald Trump. Donald Trump signed the omnibus bill. And what he did was he redlined a bunch of things that need to be removed. So we'll segue this. But the point I'm trying to make is right now, based on official political actions, it looks like Trump's power is gone. It's gone. Mitch McConnell, the establishment, Nancy Pelosi, they're all like, thank you, Trump. You're finished. Trump got Ocean's 11, man. The things they set up, the way they, the way they did mail-in voting and all this stuff. Yep. But I say but. And we'll talk about this omnibus spending thing and Trump's abilities and his power and what's really going on with this. But I'll say this. Right now, Trump is faced with this ridiculous spending bill, $2.3 trillion or whatever. He called on Congress to give the American people more money from $600 to $2,000. I'm sure most of you are aware. They wouldn't do it. But the Democrats proposed a unanimous consent, amendment. And the Republicans rejected it because the bloated garbage like Pakistani gender studies is still in the bill. Trump signed it. And Mitch McConnell said, thank you. But Trump redlined stuff. I'll tell you what. Trump is saying Congress promises that they'll review Section 230. And I gave them a redlined, document that they should review. And you know what the Democrats said? Shove it. We're not going to do it. Too bad. Thanks for signing. Bye-bye. Yeah, Trump's power. But what happens if 10 million people show up in Washington, D.C. on the 6th? Now, that's where things get crazy, because if Trump really does have prominent and popular support to that scale, Trump just might be like, the people have spoken. More importantly, the thing that worries me the most is, what if so many people show up, Congress can't hold the joint session? What if Congress is barred, that the police set up barricades and motorcades to allow Congress to even get in? I tell you, what happens if... I'm just hear me out. See, yesterday I did this story about Nancy Pelosi and whether or not she's going to be elected Speaker of the House. Are you ready for the most important bit? I'm going to stress right now. I don't think any of this will happen. I think there's going to be a really big event on January 6th. I think there's going to be a bunch of prominent people there. We're aiming to do our live show from right there in the heart of D.C., and bring people on and various activists and talk to them about, various issues and things like that. We'll see. We're booked, but internet issues might make it impossible. So we might just try and get some people from the event to come up, after the event or something like that. Maybe they'll stick around. Let me tell you, I hope you're ready for this. It's already been said that Nancy Pelosi could lose her speakership because Democrats may have COVID and may be forced not to be able to vote. Now, this is happening, this vote on January 6th. They have to vote on new rules for remote voting on January 3rd. So that is likely going to put a stop to all that. I could have my dates wrong, but my understanding is the first thing they have to do is vote for Speaker of the House. They can't vote for new rules. They got to vote for Speaker of the House. What happens if, for some reason, come January 6th, there is an insufficient amount of Democrats to give the Republicans a tiny majority? I think that the swing is only like 10 votes right now, or like 11 votes. So what happens if some Democrats many people have already tested for COVID can't show up? I mean, the chances that we see an objection, Republicans in the Senate and in the House are going to object. What happens if they object and then for some reason there's just 10 or 11, 12 or whatever Democrats who are unavailable? What happens if some Democrats just abstain? I don't think they would, right? The point is, you have to understand, as they say it'll never happen and Trump can't do it, the difference between Trump being president right now and Joe Biden being president, you can talk about 7 million votes. You can talk about 306 electoral votes, Trump's 232. And I'll tell you this, as much as I don't think it will happen, the reality is it's like 11 House votes. That's it. I'll tell you this. It's not just that. There's a couple Senate votes because Mitch McConnell and a bunch of Republicans are probably going to reject this. But in terms of the actual majorities, this is why I think it's not going to happen. But in terms of the actual majorities, you have in the House like 11 votes. And if those people for some reason are sick or unable to vote and they don't have remote voting, there's a chance the objection stands in the House and the Senate. I really don't think it will happen. Why? Because Republicans in the establishment have already turned on Trump. Okay, so this is a tweet I showed you the other day from Adam Kinzinger, who said, no evidence, nothing but your temper tantrum and crazy conspiracies, embarrassing. How would the Republicans win in the Senate? when you have other Republicans who are doing things like this. Now, Rep. Kinzinger is a House of Representatives. He's in the House. He's not in the Senate. But that's the point. Even if the Democrats, lose a handful of votes, you still have Republican representatives who are going to block Trump. And that's it. Trump's control over the party is fractured. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. Now, if Trump has 10 million people in D.C., he might just be like, I got 2 weeks left. Let's roll. And then do something crazy. Maybe nobody could even get to the Capitol buildings because too many people are there. I highly doubt the senators are going to sleep in the chamber, but maybe they'll come early because they know no one's going to be there until late at night. It's interesting. You'd think the rally and protest would be called for like January 5th. That way people are there occupying D.C. for a day or two or whatever. But anyway, I digress. What if so many people are there at like 5 a.m. on the 6th that they can't even get cars through? I'll tell you, I'm not convinced it's going to happen, but I am convinced it's going to be a fairly large event. I do. Because I know a lot of people who aren't super political, who don't travel, who are saying things like, I'm going to go. I started hearing from people who are like internet armchair activists. They post for Trump and stuff, but they're just, sitting in like the Midwest or Chicago or something. And then I see people saying like, I bought my ticket already. And I'm like, wow. I was like, if you can get this dude off his couch, that's kind of impressive. That's why I said, you know what, let's see if we can find a way to do IRL from DC. I think we can. We got some new equipment. I got it sitting right next to me. We're booked. We're ready to go. We have to run some tests. We have to send out, this is normal for like production, a scouting crew to go and test internet and connection and stuff. And it might be a really, really awful quality stream, but we'll have a stream nonetheless. And we'll be able to film like we've got a good location. This is going to be spicy. But it may just turn out to be impossible. Look, maybe that it's going to be hard to get into DC. Maybe you get stuck in DC. I don't know. It might be hard. The internet might not be good enough. So we still got a lot to do, but I'm planning on being there. But let me do this. I want to talk about Trump's power and where we're at right now and why I think that we're facing the end of the Trump era. And I think Trump knows it. Take a look at this. Mitch McConnell thanks Trump for signing the coronavirus relief bill. He said, I applaud the president's decision to get billions of dollars of crucial COVID-19 relief out the door and into the hands of American families. I'm glad the American people will receive this much needed assistance as our nation continues battling this pandemic. My full statement. $600. That's not going to do anything. The memes going around are like $600 is just enough to build a guillotine, at Home Depot. It's not going to do anything. Trump signed this. It's really amazing. Well, Trump issued a statement. Let me show you what Trump said. He said, as president of the United States, it is my responsibility to protect the people of our country from the economic devastation and hardship that was caused by the China virus. I understand that many small businesses have been forced to close as a result of harsh actions by Democrat-run states. Many people are back to work, but my job is not done until everyone is back to work. Fortunately, as a result of my work with Congress and passing the CARES Act earlier this year, we avoided another Great Depression. Under my leadership, Project Warp Speed has been a tremendous success. My administration and I developed a vaccine many years ahead of the wildest expectations. And we are distributing these vaccines and others soon coming to millions of people. As president, I have told Congress that I want far less wasteful spending and more money going to the American people in the form of $2,000 checks per adult and $600 per child. As president, I am demanding many rescissions under the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. The act provides that, quote, whenever the president determines that all or part of any budget authority will not be required to carry out the full objectives or scope of programs for which it is provided, or that such budget authority should be rescinded for fiscal policy or other reasons, including termination of authorized project or activities for which budget authority has been provided, the president shall transmit to both houses of Congress a special message describing the amount to be reserved, the relevant accounts, the reasons for the rescissions, and the economic effects of the rescission. I will sign the omnibus and COVID package with a strong message that makes clear to Congress that wasteful items need to be removed. I will send back to Congress a redlined version, item by item, accompanied by the formal rescission request to Congress, insisting that those funds be removed from the bill. I am signing this bill to restore unemployment benefits, stop evictions, provide rental assistance, add money for PPP, return our airline workers back to work, add substantially more money for vaccine distribution, and much more. On Monday, the House will vote to increase payments to individuals from $600 to $2,000. Therefore, a family of four will receive $5,200. Additionally, Congress has promised that Section 230, which so unfairly benefits big tech at the expense of the American people, will be reviewed and either be terminated or substantially reformed. Likewise, the House and Senate have agreed to focus strongly on the very substantial voter fraud which took place in the November 3rd presidential election. The Senate will start the process for a vote that increases checks to 2,000, repeals Section 230, and starts an investigation into voter fraud. Big tech must not get the protections of Section 230. Voter fraud must be fixed. Much more money is coming. I will never give up my fight for the American people. Well, I appreciate the effort. House Democrats say they'll flat out ignore Trump's suggested edits to coronavirus relief bill. There you go. There it is. Trump signed the bill. And to me, that's the ultimate sign that it's done. Again, 10 million people showing up in Washington, D.C., and Trump might say, you know what? Now or never. Screw it. And he might make some kind of major move. I really don't believe it. Mitch McConnell, the Republican establishment, the Democrats, they're all saying, thank you for signing the bill, Trump. Bye-bye. We're not going to do anything you say. Everything he's asked for likely will not happen. So that's it. I think this is the Trump era officially wrapping up. I think Trump knew that there was nothing he could do. Now, listen, over at the Donald.win, these are diehard Trump supporters, and for good reason, they're not going to bow out. I could say the same for many people who refused to back down for Hillary back in the 2016 or whatever. Not that they're the same people. No, don't get me wrong. But over at the Donald.win, their goal is to support the president, so they can't allow people to come in there and say it's over, it's done. They need people to support the president to try and fight tooth and nail to make sure he wins, which is just at this point impossible unless Trump takes some drastic military action. I think he can. I did a segment on the Insurrection Act, just before Christmas. And one of the provisions of the Insurrection Act is that the president may send in military or federalized National Guard in the event that people's constitutional rights are being deprived. And they are. And we all know they are. There was a story about an illegal bar happening in New Jersey. It was a rave. 200 people were booted out. Some people were arrested. And I think, well, I understand the restrictions on alcohol sales. You can make an argument about that, sure. But people have a First Amendment right to assemble. You can't stop that no matter what. The First Amendment provides no exceptions for pandemics. It just does not. And so, yes, Trump does have that power. I don't think he'll use it. I really don't. We've got Republicans who are defying Trump. He's not going to get the votes he needs on January 6th. I think there will be objections. I know for a fact because the new wave of Trump populist Republicans are absolutely saying they're going to object. And we've got a handful of senators. The Hill reports 5 GOP senators to watch in next month's Electoral college fight. They say Rep. Mo Brooks is hunting for a Senate Republican to take part in his guaranteed to fail effort to overthrow the election results on January 6th. They have a handful of people. They say Tommy Tuberville, Kelly Loeffler, Rand Paul, Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz. Maybe these people do object, but I'll tell you this. I think if they do, the Hill's calling it guaranteed to fail. I think the idea is they'll get the objection. They'll have their debate and deliberation. Trump will lose, and they'll say, we fought for you, and that's it. And then I'll tell you what happens next. Now, this is just a normalcy bias, but this is certainly a pessimism bias, not an optimism bias. So for those that are familiar, optimism bias is where people think only the good thing is going to happen. And it's part of the normalcy bias that it can't happen here. Everything's going to stay normal. Now, I'll tell you the pessimism bias. This 2.3 omnibus spending package is not out of the ordinary. It's not. We always give insane money for insane things. Yeah, I made the joke on Twitter. I said, I was terrified when I learned that the children in Pakistan would be losing their gender programs. But then when I saw that Donald Trump signed the omnibus package, I knew I could rest easy that although Americans are about to face mass eviction, the sacrifice is worth it to make sure that Pakistani youth know what Z and Zer means. Yeah, that's what's your money's going to. It's normal. Omnibus spending to this degree is normal. And it really makes me wonder about what we're wasting money on. And boy, does it make me swing far to the left. You want to know why? Think about how life functions right now. Under Donald Trump in 2019, we had the best economy ever. And we were pumping money into psychotic garbage like gender programs in Pakistan. Could you imagine if in this great economy, we spent that money here? Wow. Makes you think, huh? Now, listen, the economy was doing really well. Things were expanding, but we've got crumbling infrastructure. Have we even fixed the pipes in Flint yet? Amazing. Trump could have been like, well, imagine if Trump came out and made that statement. I want in the omnibus spending, all that money that's going to these gender programs or whatever to be diverted to Flint to provide clean drinking water to those people, because the American people who pay taxes should be the ones reaping the benefits. I hear from the left all the time. They talk about how we pool our resources together and then we help everybody. I'm down. Okay. You know, the existing resources being pooled. Cause I'm not, right wing or laissez-faire capitalist or anything like that. I love it when these, smear outlets try and smear me, but it really makes no sense. I'm fairly lefty on economic policy for sure. Imagine this. And I think even Trump supporters would agree. All this money they're wasting. Imagine if Trump just said all of that money must be spent in America. I'm pretty sure Trump supporters would be like, yes. When Trump announced he wanted an increase $2,000, Trump supporters agreed with him. And the left was like, but how come when Bernie proposed it, it's blah, blah, blah. No, Trump was always in favor of the stimulus. It's the Republicans. Maybe the left doesn't realize that Trump isn't a Republican. I love this meme. They took a Bernie Sanders tweet about like people losing health care in the United States, but nowhere else. And then they put Trump's name instead of Bernie. And then Trump supporters actually pushed it out and supported it. And the left is like, haha, look, Trump supporters actually support Bernie. And it's like, duh, because they're populists, because they're sitting there saying, if you're going to take our money, at least spend it on us. Where you at, Bernie? It's so amazing that right now the obstruction to the increased spending bill was the Republicans. But that makes sense. The Republicans don't do anything. I can give credit to the Democrats for at least lighting the fire that burns the house down, figuratively. And what do the Republicans do? They throw a bucket of water on and go, well, we tried. That's it. At least, look, there are some politicians that I think are all right. And they're mostly on the Republican side. Even though I don't agree with them on a lot of their policy stances, the Democrats you don't have anybody standing on principle. I guess you had Jeff Van Drew. He quit, became a Republican. You have Tulsi Gabbard, and they say she was assigned Republican at birth. The Democratic Party is the party of bowing to Pelosi. Maybe something changes. Maybe people say they've had enough. But I'll tell you the most important thing out of all of this. Do you know what I see with everything happening? When I see people say that Joe Biden is not their president, it's not the same as when they said that about Trump. It's not. Trump was strong. Trump came in with a bang, and he was making strong moves, and there was investigations, and there was political warfare. Now they're saying Joe Biden is not my president. And I see that, and I'm like, I hear it. I understand it. And I do not recognize Joe Biden as a capable man. What that means is I'm not going to cry about a Joe Biden presidency. I've said over and over again that I would laugh about it. And the left tries to claim that I'm coping mad that Trump lost, even though I've been laughing about a Biden presidency. I've been making jokes about the paintings we have of Joe Biden like eating children. And the Trump supporters are mad because I'm just like, I guess, rolling over and accepting a Biden presidency. So there's no winning, right? But I'll tell you what I see when I look at Joe Biden. He's completely incapable of being president. It looks like there's a weekend at Bernie's president. He's going to be sitting there propped up by Kamala Harris. And you expect me to believe that he's going to be dictating anything? Going to be controlling anything? I don't. Joe Biden looks to me like a scarecrow, just propped up to let people think there's a president. So what happens? I don't know. I know that people are flocking like crazy to places like Idaho, Iowa, Wyoming, and West Virginia. I tell you, man, we've been talking about getting this big old property in West Virginia. Property is the prices are skyrocketing. Property is being sold like hotcakes. I can't believe it. I was looking at an empty lot, just trees. You got to clear it all out. And the price jumped by 100%. 100% in like a week. They must have gotten so many offers. They were like, no, jack the price up. West Virginia, right now, I think it's going to have a major boom because it's close enough to the East Coast. You know, there are parts of West Virginia where I think you've got big cities with only like an hour drive or something like that. Like you go to central West Virginia, you're probably in the middle of nowhere. But there are people buying like crazy. I don't know what happens on January 6th. I'm kind of worried. I'll tell you this. Let me be real with all you guys. One of the things that has me concerned about doing the show from January 6th is I think there's a possibility that that it happens, that there's a happening of sorts, that something happens, and then you're trapped in D.C., and that doesn't sound too fun. So I booked, we're prepared, and I'm thinking about it, and it's like, all right, do we want to make sure we can keep doing the show, or do we want to be there? It's a tough call. I think the likelihood that a happening occurs is slim. I think you'll have a big rally. I think Trump will lose. But if on the 6th, you've got hundreds of thousands of people, let's say this, not even 10 million, just hundreds of thousands of people show up. And then Congress objects. A couple hours go by. People are all outside yelling, rabble, rabble. And then they come out. The person runs full speed, like with the Pope or whatever, and he holds up the sign and it says, Joe Biden is president. What do all of those people do? Do they just say, oh, well, shucks, I guess I'll go home? Or are these the hardcore Trump supporters, the people who refuse to back down? There's a big difference between your typical conservative and a Trump supporter. Trump supporters clearly are in favor of, Trump spending. They're populists. They're not as concerned as traditional conservatives about, spending. Just that example. Many conservatives have already been posting on Reddit saying like, well, I'm going to go home, go to sleep and just wake up and fight another day. Trump supporters are saying bring tents, bring water and prepare for the long haul. Very different people. If every single Trump supporter, of which there's 74 million, but let's say like out of the 74 million, let's say, there's tens of millions that are staunch, hardcore Trump supporters. What happens if they all actually showed up? Things would get crazy for sure. I guess we'll find out in about a week. I'll see you there, maybe. Thanks for hanging out. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you all then.